How does a queen, who held a nation in her grasp for 3 decades, face the one rival she can neither outwit nor eliminate? In the cold dawn of 1589, within the stone fortress of the Château de Blois, Catherine de Medici, the Serpent Queen of France, is confined to her bed. Her body, once a symbol of dynastic endurance, now betrays her with every labored breath. Yet, her mind remains a battleground. As the candlelight flickers, the shadows in her chamber coalesce into figures from her past, the ghosts of allies and adversaries she forged and broke. These are not supernatural specters, but the vivid, haunting memories of a life lived on the razor's edge of power. We witness her final, silent confrontation with the architects of her triumphs and the casualties of her ambition. This is the story of her last hours, a testament to a will of iron encased in failing flesh, where the legacy of a queen is weighed in a balance of survival, strategy, and the indelible marks she left on history. Was she the preserver of the French crown or the architect of its darkest hours? The answer lies in the shadows of her final moments. January 1589. The Château de Blois is a formidable fortress of stone and ice, but the deepest, most pervasive chill resides within the Queen Mother's royal chambers. Catherine de Medici, the Florentine merchant's daughter, the so-called Serpent in winter, who slithered her way to the absolute apex of French power, is finally succumbing to the one rival she can neither poison, imprison, nor outmaneuver: time itself. Rattling whisper against the opulent brocade pillows. Each inhalation, a monumental effort of her failing body. Yet, within this fragile shell, her mind remains a razor-sharp labyrinth of complex strategy and vivid memory. The flickering candlelight contorts the dancing shadows on the stone walls, and within their shifting forms, she sees a face from her distant past. Diane de Poitiers, her husband King Henry's lifelong favored mistress, materializes not as a specter of simple jealousy, but as the first ghostly figure in a long, inevitable procession of rivals. Diane, eternally beautiful, forever confident, represents Catherine's initial, desperate struggle for relevance, a painful reminder of a time when her only perceived power was her fertility. Catherine's trembling fingers tighten their grip on her heavy golden crucifix, the cold metal a stark, grounding contrast to the burning intensity of her memories. She had outlasted Diane, inheriting her exquisite chateau, her political influence, her king's court. But victory is a cold and hollow comfort on a lonely final night. The room seems to grow perceptibly colder as the phantom of Diane offers a knowing smile, a silent testament to the fact that some rivalries truly transcend the grave. Calculating eyes narrow. The game is not over until the last piece has been moved, and even now, she is plotting her final move, the shaping of her own formidable legacy, before the winter claims her completely. The heavy, gilded crown of France was never truly hers to wear, but Catherine de Medici expertly forged her own formidable diadem from the deep shadows of her son's tumultuous reigns. On her final night, these very shadows coalesce, taking the imposing shapes of her most dangerous and relentless political adversaries. The powerful House of Guise, the ambitious Henry, Duke of Guise, and his cunning brother, the Cardinal of Lorraine, appear in her mind's eye, not as faint phantoms of the past, but as living, breathing embodiments of the aristocratic arrogance she tirelessly fought against her entire life. They seem to stand at the foot of her grand bed, cloaked in spectral velvet and insatiable ambition, their presence a suffocating weight in the already stuffy, candle-scented room. Catherine vividly recalls their constant, treacherous maneuvering, their relentless attempts to usurp the Valois throne through cynical manipulations of religious fervor and sheer military might. They saw her as a foreign interloper, an Italian merchant spawn unfit to govern the sacred soil of France. She, in turn, saw them as the single greatest threat to the stability of the kingdom and the dynastic future of her children. Her long reign as regent was a masterful tightrope walk over a gaping chasm of civil war, with the Guise family constantly attempting to sever the line. She had balanced them, played them against the Huguenots, and ultimately witnessed their dramatic downfall. Her own son, King Henry III, had recently orchestrated their removal from the world, a move of brutal finality that Catherine herself had advised against, fearing the chaotic repercussions. Now, their spectral forms seemed to mock her, their silent judgment a chilling question: was the ensuing chaos worth the consolidation of power? The shadows in the room deepen, stretching like grasping hands toward the fading monarch. Of all the ghosts that haunt her, none are more clamorous than those from August 1572. The memory of the St. Bartholomew's Day massacre, the event forever bound to her name, does not arrive as a single specter, but as a deafening chorus. In her fevered state, the gentle flicker of the candle seems to roar into a great blaze, the shadows twisting into shapes of panic and strife. She sees not the specifics of the conflict, but feels its crushing weight. The moment when political calculation spun into a vortex of citywide mayhem. She had intended a targeted strike, a surgical removal of the Huguenot leadership, to prevent a coup and another civil war. It was a move of cold, pragmatic statecraft. But the fire she lit became an inferno, consuming thousands and staining her reputation for all time. Now, the spectral face of Admiral Coligny, the Huguenot leader whose downfall was the catalyst, looms before her. His expression is not one of anger but of profound disappointment, a silent accusation that resonates louder than any shout. Did she lose control, or did she secretly unleash the fury of the Parisian mob? The question has followed her for 17 years and sits with her now, in her final hours. She presses the crucifix to her lips, not for salvation, but as if to silence the echoes of that crimson wedding celebration for her daughter, Marguerite. It was supposed to be a union of peace, but it became the prelude to a national trauma. The air in the room grows thick with the phantom scent of smoke, a figment of a memory that refuses to fade, a testament to a queen's gambit that became an indelible part of history's darker chapters. A sudden draft chills the room, making the candle flames dance wildly. It feels as if a door to the past has been opened, admitting a presence both familiar and foreign. This is the phantom of Mary, Queen of Scots, her daughter-in-law, the girl who was briefly Queen of France. Unlike the other specters, Mary does not appear as a solid form. Instead, she is an absence, a feeling of what might have been. Catherine sees her not as the woman who was recently dispatched by English steel, but as the vibrant, charming, and dangerously legitimate Catholic claimant who once held court within these very walls. Mary was everything Catherine was not. A queen by birth, not by marriage, beloved for her beauty, not feared for her intellect. For a time, Mary's very existence was a challenge to Catherine's own son's grasp on the throne. She was a pawn, a threat, and a constant diplomatic headache. Catherine remembers the intricate dance of managing the young queen, arranging her return to Scotland, and then watching from afar as Mary's life spiraled into a series of disastrous choices. The rivalry was one of subtle influence and dynastic security. Catherine fought for the survival of the Valois line, while Mary embodied a romantic, but ultimately doomed, alternative. Now, the empty space in the room seems to hold Mary's lingering ambition, her tragic allure. Catherine looks towards an ornate, empty chair in the corner, imagining the young Scottish queen sitting there. A silent reminder that even in her absence, Mary's legacy continues to shape the political landscape of Europe. It is a rivalry that ended not with a checkmate, but with one player simply being swept from the board, leaving an unsettling void. The shadows in her room coalesce, taking on familiar, agonizing forms. Not the ghosts of rivals, but of her own blood. A procession of fragile crowns. Forever pale, sickly boyo, his reign a brief, flickering candle extinguished before it could ever truly burn. His passing was her first taste of true political power, a bitter inheritance. Then Charles, his eyes wide not with royal authority, but with a permanent, feverish glint. she can almost hear the phantom bells of Saint-Germain-l'Auxerrois, the toll that began the Great Cleansing of 1572. Did she push him, or did he fall into that abyss of fanaticism? The distinction blurs now, lost in the miasma of the past. Her hand tightens on the crucifix, the cold metal a poor substitute for the warmth of a son's hand. He was an instrument, a necessary tool for the preservation of the Valois line, yet the memory of his tormented final days is a splinter in her soul. Finally, the most flamboyant and troubled of all. Henry. He is not a memory but a current, festering wound. The King of France, her last surviving son, is isolated, his authority crumbling, surrounded by enemies she can no longer hold at bay. He surrounds himself with favorites while the kingdom fractures. She had forged a dynasty of iron, but it was born by sons of glass, each one shattering in turn. Her legacy was meant to be a line of kings, but instead, it is a gallery of specters, a testament to the high cost of survival and the ultimate vanity of power. Her iron will could not forge stronger heirs, and in their weakness, she sees the blueprint for her own failure, the final, undeniable checkmate. The air in the room grows colder, shimmering with a memory more beautiful and venomous than any other. She appears by the grand window, not as a specter of age, but as she was in her prime. Diane de Poitiers, the king's beloved, the true queen of France in all but name. Catherine watches the phantom form, an ethereal projection of youth and grace, move through her chamber. For 2 decades, Catherine had been the patient shadow while Diane was the radiant sun, basking in the warmth of Henry's affection, adorned with the jewels of the crown, mistress of the magnificent Château de Chenonceau. The memory of that long, public humiliation is a sharp, familiar ache, a testament to her calculated endurance. But then, the vision shifts, the illusion of Diane's power wavering. Catherine remembers Henry's fall, the splinter of the lance from Montgomery's joust, the sudden, shocking transfer of power into her own hands. She sees herself, newly empowered in widow's black, calmly demanding the return of the crown jewels, methodically stripping her rival of every title and property, forcing her from the palaces she had called home. On her deathbed, the memory is not one of lingering pain, but of ultimate, chilling victory. The phantom of Diane may be beautiful, but she is powerless, a mere whisper in the stone halls that now belong to Catherine's legacy alone. The Serpent Queen always collected her debts, no matter how long she had to wait. The thought brings a ghost of a smile to her lips, a final assertion of dominance over the woman who had once eclipsed her entirely, a rivalry that forged her resolve and defined her rise from an Italian outsider to the formidable matriarch of France. The spectral light of the Duchess fades, replaced by a colder, more severe presence. From the shadows near the hearth, a new figure coalesces, a tall, stern man in the armor of a soldier, his face a mask of grim accusation. It is the Admiral, Gaspard de Coligny, the Huguenot leader whose end precipitated a crimson tide in the streets of Paris. Catherine does not flinch. She meets the phantom's gaze with her own, her expression unreadable. She remembers the escalating tensions, the kingdom fracturing along religious lines, the constant threat of civil war. She remembers the decision, not as a moment of malice, but of brutal, political calculus. To her, it was surgery, a swift, terrible cut to remove a spreading infection that threatened the life of her kingdom and the reign of her sons. The phantom bells of Saint-Germain-l'Auxerrois seem to toll in the silence of the room, a sound she can never truly escape. They were the signal, the point of no return. The Admiral's spectral form does not speak, but his presence fills the room with the weight of thousands of souls, a monumental chapter of her reign written in controversy. She had done it to preserve the Valois crown, to secure France. As she lies dying, she does not ask for the Admiral's forgiveness. She simply acknowledges his place in her story. A testament to the brutal choices required of a monarch in an age of unforgiving conflict. He was a piece on the board, and she, the player who sacrificed him to save the game. The accusing soldier dissolves, and the room's oppressive weight shifts from politics to a more intimate, maternal sorrow. A new vision forms in the corner, not a person, but a swirling mist of stars and celestial charts. This is the domain of Cosimo Ruggieri and Nostradamus, the seers she trusted, the men who offered her glimpses into a future she desperately sought to control. The price of their prophecy was knowledge, and knowledge was a burden. She remembers their cryptic words, the warnings she tried to heed, the fates she tried to outmaneuver. Fleeting, beautiful images of her sons appear in the cosmic dust. Francis, the boy king; Charles, the troubled intellectual; Henry, her dazzling favorite. But with each image comes the symbol of their undoing. The vision of Francis is followed by a phantom fever. And for Henry, the most beloved, she had fought to place them on the throne, and she had to watch, one by one, as fate tore them from it. The prophecy had foretold the end of the Valois line. A truth she battled her entire life. Now on the edge of eternity, she understands the astrologer's greatest lesson. One can see the future, but one cannot escape it. The stars are indifferent, their patterns as beautiful as they are cruel. For a woman who controlled a nation, the inability to save her own children was the ultimate and most personal failure. Her power had a limit, and its boundary was marked by the graves of her sons. The year is 1589. The chill in the grand bedchamber of the Château de Blois is more than the January air. It is the permeating cold of a dynasty's end, seeping through the ancient stone. The Italian merchant's daughter, who became France's formidable matriarch, lies not in a state of final, feverish calculation. Her breath is a fragile mist in the frigid room, yet her mind remains a fortress of strategy, its walls unbreached by age or illness. She had outlived her rivals, most of her children, and countless enemies. She had bartered, schemed, and survived for over half a century, holding a fractured France together with delicate threads of silk and heavy chains of iron. Her gaze drifts past the wavering candles to the heavy brocade tapestries. In their intricate, woven threads, she sees the faces of her most potent adversaries. Imperious Duke of Guise, his ambition a constant threat. The stoic Admiral Coligny, a symbol of a faith she could never fully control. They are not phantoms come for revenge, but spectral reminders of her own making, eternal players in the grand, brutal game she had so masterfully orchestrated. The shadows of the St. Bartholomew's Day affair stretch, long in her memory. A deep stain she had always justified as a surgeon's necessary, terrible cut to save the body politic from infection. She had forged crowns for her sons from the ambitions of other men, melting them down in the unforgiving crucible of civil war. Her famed flying squadron of beautiful, intelligent ladies in waiting were not merely ornaments of the court, but her most effective spies, gathering whispers that could topple dukes and redirect armies. Now, as the last whisper of her own life fades, she feels the immense weight of that iron legacy. It was a legacy of survival, yes, but also one of profound division and scorched earth. Her kingdom was intact, but it was a scarred and fragile creation. In her final moments, she does not pray for salvation, but reviews the moves on the board, ensuring her checkmate against historical oblivion would hold for centuries to come. January 5th, 1589. Within the frigid stone walls of the Château de Blois, a queen's world had shrunk to the confines of a single cavernous room. Catherine de Medici, the Serpent Queen, the Italian merchant's daughter who had commanded the destiny of France for 30 years, lay ensnared not by assassins or armies, but by the final, inescapable adversary, her own failing body. Pleurisy was the clinical term, a fire in her lungs that no royal physician could extinguish. The air, thick with the scent of beeswax, incense, and medicinal herbs, carried a deep, penetrating chill that clung to the heavy brocade curtains. Each breath was a shallow, rattling effort, a stark, undignified contrast to the formidable, well, that still burned fiercely in her sharp, calculating eyes. She was a monarch held captive by mortality, her empire of influence reduced to a grand bed of velvet and lace, her commands now just whispers lost in the rustle of sheets. As shadows thrown by the lone, flickering candlelight danced upon the ancient tapestries, they warped and took on familiar forms, specters of her long, contentious reign. There, in the corner, was the elegant silhouette of Mary, Queen of Scots, her youthful rival for influence, a fleeting phantom of beauty and lost claims. Another shadow morphed into the stern, accusing visage of Admiral Coligny, a permanent specter from the night of St. Bartholomew's. An eternal reminder of the price of stability and the indelible stain on her legacy. These were not ghosts, but the indelible imprints of a life lived on a knife's edge, a reign forged in conspiracy, survival, and compromise. Her trembling fingers tightened around the golden crucifix, its cold, solid metal a grounding presence against the encroaching void. Was it for salvation she prayed, or for a final, silent validation of her ruthless choices? She had outlived her enemies, her children, her own ambitions. All that remained was the phantom weight of her crown, now a memory, and the final, quiet exhalation that would release her from the grand, brutal theater of power she had so masterfully conducted. The Black Queen's last act was not one of statecraft, but of a profound, solitary surrender. The Iron Matriarch was finally becoming a memory herself, a legend of blood and iron about to pass into history.